Welcome to the Think Deep podcast, where we talk all things deep. I am David Dilworth, and as always, I have my brother here, Andrew Kim,
Hey, how you doing, everyone?
and we have a special guest here, Nicolas Cofield.
Hello, everyone.
So, Nicholas is he's a fan of the podcast, who's a friend of Andrew. Um, uh, from what I know is that they've got together gaming, but he also works a little bit here in the educational system. Heard one of our podcasts there, and we're just kind of want to elaborate off of what we talked about before when we came to the educational system. So, I'm very curious to hear what Nick has to say about topics when it comes to education there. And just to kind of like start off with, I know that you said that you are kind of doing some tutoring right now, things like that. If you want to kind of tell us a little bit about that.
First off, I'm actually a high school student,
Okay.
junior, 16 years old. I'm currently working on a double major in math and psychology, and I tutor on the side. And being in Southern Illinois, around the people in my town and whatever, I come across a lot of people who are somewhat lost when it comes to education because they didn't grow up in what I would call a setting where being smart was better than being able to do manual labor or things of that nature.
Hmm. So these are people that are within the same school system of you, or is this like people who are they're at their last chance of graduating or anything like that? Like, how do you get these students?
I find people usually who they slacked off at their first year of high school and whatnot, and getting close to being a senior, they got a wake-up call, and they realized if they didn't get to work that they were going to be stuck there.
Hmm.
And the worst nightmare for anyone that hates school is to stay in school any longer than they have to.
Really? So,
So in terms,
go ahead.
sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
In terms of the high school system, I mean, I can't really speak for Illinois because I've never been there or went through that education system. But in North Carolina, right before I graduated, or I'm sorry, no, right after I graduated, they started this exit exam. So pretty much you had to write an essay, if you will, as a senior in high school, and then take an exam as well and score enough points. Then you were eligible to graduate. Is that something they do in Illinois?
They don't do anything of that sort. At the elementary level, they have something called the ISAT exam. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but students from I want to say the second grade all the way up to eighth grade take a standardized exam covering mathematics, science, and writing. When I was in sixth grade, they did away with writing, and it was just math, and science became more scientific thinking. But the problem I saw was that teachers were too busy focusing on preparing students for the tests than teaching the curriculum. For the simple reason, their jobs, a lot of the time, were connected to how students performed on the tests.
Hmm.
So would you say that's a bad thing? And the reason why I ask you that is because one of my friends is a teacher right now at an elementary school, and he teaches at an underprivileged school with inner city children. And the thing is, with his school, they push him to teach the curriculum, but he sees that his students aren't grasping the concept. So if he believes that if they can't grasp the basic stuff, how can they learn the stuff that builds upon that? So he actually teaches at their pace and at their level as opposed to just, pushing through with the curriculum, even regardless of whether or not the student learned it. Now, would it be similar, because you were talking about there, where the teachers don't teach, the curriculum. So how do you feel about that?
The way I look at it, if a teacher teaches the curriculum properly and in a way that the students can understand the information and at a pace where no student lags behind, I would have to say that would be better preparation for the exams than to just do exam prep for the year, for the simple reason the curriculum has core concepts that are tied in to the standardized exams. So the curriculum is designed to prepare the students for the exam, and then they do supplementary material to prepare for the exams.
Okay. And did you ever attend? So the school you're attending now, is it a specialized school in terms of, is it what I guess we call here in North Carolina a charter school, or where you have people shipped to the school from different parts of the county, or?
I just attend standard high school, but thanks to the Southeastern Illinois College dual credit program, I take college classes, college level classes, and I get credit and points and scoring for my high school transcripts and my college transcripts.
Okay.
Now, were you always very, because I'm telling you, in high school, especially the way that you're talking, you speak so eloquently, the fact that you're teaching other students and stuff like that, I was not like that when I was at high school at all. I was very far from that. I think a lot of, but before I got to the point where I thought education was important, I was kind of at a point where it was more about not getting yelled at by my parents, don't want to get in trouble with my teacher, and I kind of wanted to just I guess, skate by when it came to that there. This need of achieving this equation of if I learn and I go to college and it equals to getting a good job and getting a good paycheck, like that to me was so far away from the finish line that it didn't seem important at that moment. It's funny that you talked about in the beginning that a lot of it has to do with these people's value system when it comes to they value the job in the workplace over the importance over that education. Why do you think that is?
With some people, it comes to a decision which is more important, and I honestly don't think at this time and age we should ever have to make such a decision. But with going into the workforce immediately, you don't have to go through a whole bunch of other stuff as you would going through the education system. Because after your high school diploma, you go to a community college if you want to finish your generals, or you jump straight into the university system. Whereas after your high school diploma, you could go into a job, receive on-site training, and start getting gains immediately.
Well, an interesting point that you brought up is that you said that you don't believe those are decisions that you have to make, should have to make so early. Why do you feel that way in terms of why do you believe that students, at the end of the high school level, shouldn't have to make those tough decisions? Because, I feel that, be it for better or worse, that children are growing up more quickly with every generation. They're exposed to so much more different things. As we said in previous podcasts, they have access to the internet, to smartphones. They can get information so quickly to them, and because they're exposed to that, they're growing up at a faster rate. They're more knowledgeable. Yeah, granted, their maturity level may not match the knowledge that they had. They can't take that knowledge and transfer it into wisdom. But from your perspective, why do you say that they shouldn't have to make those types of decisions so early?
The reason they have to is we live in a fast-paced society. Like you said, we have the internet, we have cell phones, and everything is just now. People pay tons of money for faster internet, the fastest cell phones, fastest computers, and everything is just so time-based. And like I said, they usually end up picking the workforce over education simply because they can make the gains as soon as they finish up high school, start making money.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times that we think kind of in this American school system of the way we kind of teach is that we learn things to get to the next level, to get to that next level in order for you to be in what society labels as being a successful, I guess, contributor to society. To society. So it seems like we put our eggs in our basket to this boxed in equation of you you read something, you comprehend it, and there's a test, and you take that test for it to go on to the next one. But retaining the information and using real critical thinking skills seems to be what's lost. I mean, one of the things that's a required class, I know I've lived in Georgia and I've lived in Florida, that there must be 2 foreign languages in high school. And I know a lot of people who've graduated high school, and I know even more who've graduated and they don't know a lick of Spanish. They don't know a lick of French. And it was more they did it so they can pass that test. Uh, do you agree that that is some type of disconnect when it comes to our goals of education is more of income wise than it is for actual I guess overall wisdom and knowledge and learning how to be a critical thinker when it comes to society in different situations?
I agree completely. Once upon a time, maybe people would have actually valued their educations, but now more so it's to cheat the system, to beat the system, and to take advantage of the safeguards and whatnot that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have, for example, college athletes. I think it's been documented before. Derrick Rose, if I'm not mistaken, got in trouble over it. Not cheating on tests, but having someone else take his exams. Cheating is blatant in universities and colleges simply because it's not about learning, but about getting the grade.
Correct.
And an interesting thing you said it's not. You said about Derrick Rose, he wasn't cheating, but he had someone else take his exam. Now, for me, under my definition of cheating, I would put that up there with cheating. I mean, if you're having somebody under a false pretense take an exam as someone else, would that not be cheating? Why do you say it that way?
I say it that way because in his case, it has a lot to do with someone's future. And you're put in a position where if you're not, how do I say this? If you're more sports oriented as opposed to academics and you're focusing more on your career past college or whatnot, I'd have to say he had to make a tough decision there for the simple reason it was either not make the grade and completely bumble his chances for success or have someone take the test for him and succeed. But I'm not saying that was right. I completely agree with you that qualifies as cheating.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that when like Andrew brought an example of it was about I guess I'm trying to think in the beginning there about someone not achieving I guess certain accolades, and we either blame the educational system or the teacher itself, and or maybe the student isn't trying hard. I always feel like still, even if you got a person who's not completing the task, I kind of make that fall on the teacher. I feel because I feel that they're not finding the way to communicate that effectively. I think that I have never been through a teaching program. It seems like there is this kind of phonics way of teaching where you memorize things, you comprehend them, you have the test the next day. And if you don't learn that way, then a lot of the blame is like, well, the student is not trying hard, or they're not doing that. And I think that it's very rare, and I think there's always these moments where you find these brilliant people who tell you stories about this one teacher that connected with them and changed their life about everything. I mean, one of my stories was I remember when I first went to college, I had a history class, and thought it was like any other history class, boring. And the way that this guy talked about history, I wanted to find out more about my history because he asked everybody in the class. I remember that day. He goes, "What's your name?" And I was like, "My name's David." He goes, and he just goes to the next person. He goes, "That's not your name." And he goes to the next person. "What is your name?" This person saying, "My name's Andrew." He goes, "It's not your name." And we're just like looking at him like, why is he saying that? He was like, where do you come from? I was like, well, I come from Atlanta. He's like, where does your family come from? And he kept digging in deeper until the point where he reached a standstill, where it was like, oh, I don't really know that deep back in my history. And one of his assignments was he wanted us to find out where our name came from, including our last name. And that forced me to do kind of research more about my family and open that conversation. I had never had a teacher present it to me that way. And so I don't know if you agree with that same thing if it comes to the teaching. If you kind of work with other teachers and stuff, do you see that a lot, kind of uninspired teachers? Looks like we're having some technical difficulties here real quick. Hold on 1 second, guys. You there, Nick? All right, I think I lost both of them here. There's no editing, by the way, on the Think Deep podcast. So, I think I lost both of them, but I'm making a call here. We're going to get them back. I know someone's out there like, oh my God, this dead air. All right. Hello? Hello? All right, guys, hold on.
On my end, I think.
All right, here we go.
All
right, we're back, guys. All right, so Think Deep podcast, no editing, we're all live. All right, so we're all back now. So, basically, kind of, what I was going with, kind of with I left off, was, are you seeing more uninspired teachers? Do you agree that teachers kind of stick to the method that they're taught when it comes to education, and there's not a lot of seeking out on how someone learns?
I think it's accountability is on everyone's back. Me, as a student, I've had teachers who they cared about the students, genuinely cared about the students. And when compared to the other teachers, one major factor was age. And your older teachers were usually the ones that cared for their students. Mm. And now you have teachers or students becoming teachers, coming straight out of teaching programs, going straight into the education system. And it's, with the years that pass by, it's becoming impersonal as opposed to personal.
Okay. I'm just...
Now, see, it's interesting that you say that, because I've also seen the opposite end of that spectrum, where, teachers over time will become jaded and they could care less, especially the ones who are starting to get towards retirement. Now, obviously with anything, nothing is in black and white. There's gray. So there's, right now at this point, we're just talking about extremes, one side and another. The thing I've always found out about teachers, or the thing that I've noticed, is that you don't just become a teacher to become a teacher. You become a teacher to make a change, to make a difference. Is how I see it. And that's just been, maybe I've been lucky with all the teachers that I've had in my past. But yeah, I mean, I don't automatically assume things when it comes to the age of an educator. You know, just because they're young doesn't mean that I can't learn from them. Is how I look at it. But one thing I wanted to ask you though is, you say you went to a standard public high school, correct?
Yes.
So now, with that being said, have you ever been to a private school?
I have never been to a private school. Before I switched from high school or grade school, junior high to high school, I was given an invitation to a Christian university, and I was also offered the chance to transfer to a few of the high schools that were financially better off up north.
Now, the reason why I ask you that is, just your own personal opinion, since you don't have experience in one, in terms of both. One, do you believe that you would have benefited by going to, let's say, a specialty school, one that, specializes for, more advanced students, if you will?
I believe I would have benefited because how I feel going to high school is that all students are blanket measured with this rod that's supposed to be one size fit all. And some students meet that mark. In my case, I passed that mark, and then there were other students that fell by the wayside, and my teachers ended up having to prioritize how they taught the classes to teach as many of the students as they could, and in some cases, they weren't able to get to everyone. They couldn't save every single one of the students.
Well, then that actually kind of goes back to something I touched upon before in the past in the podcast is, do you believe that it should be survival of all at the expense of the fittest, or survival of the fittest?
Tough call. I'm going to have to say survival of the fittest. For example, foreign countries, Asian countries, China, Japan, their education system runs similar to that. I want to say it was either Germany or Croatia that at the 6th or 7th year of learning, every single student takes a placement exam. And based on the score that they make on that exam, some of them get thrown off into vocational paths, others into higher education paths, other students, a mix of the two.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
But if you try to save all of them, if you try to save all the students, you spread yourself out too thin.
Mm. And I think that also takes the real world element in it when it comes to not having that pool up there. The thing is that I went to private Christian school and then went to public school and then went to military school. And I would say in private Christian school, there was a lot of people who were, I guess, progressive thinkers. It's the best way I can put it there, who valued education. But the thing is that I found me going to public school after that, it really honed in on my social dynamics. My friends who kind of stay always there in private school, and it's not a one size fits all, I can just only name my experience. They kind of have some problems when it comes to leadership and interpersonal skills, but they're very good at when it comes to, you give them instructions to a task, they can complete that. When it comes to anything that's analytical learning, they're very good at that. One of the things that I wanted to kind of ask Andrew here, because I know, Andrew, when you were here in Daytona, you attended college here in Daytona. Did you feel that you've got that higher education that you were looking for when you went to college?
By that definition, I want to say no.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, I went to two schools in Daytona. I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I also attended Daytona, what's now known as Daytona State College, which is their local community college.
Yeah.
Now, and this is going to actually tie in with a question I wanted to throw to Nick, but with being at Embry-Riddle, I did believe that I was receiving a higher education. I could tell by the people around me and their drive and motivation and what they were striving for. It was all one and the same. Whereas at a community college that I attended, I didn't get that same feeling. Everyone was there. Uh, well, here's the funny thing. Everyone was there for the same reason, and that was more money,
Mm.
essentially. Everyone wanted to make more money. I went to a few night classes. I went to a few day classes. So I had a wide mix of people there, but one common denominator was money. Oh, I want to get, my associates so I can get more money, or I want to get specialized in this. Let's say I want to get you know, like machinist. I want to be a machinist, or let me get the accreditations for that, and so to make more money. Whereas when I was in a 4-year accredited university, everyone, especially Embry-Riddle, and maybe that's a special case because Embry-Riddle is a very specialized school. It's called the Harvard of Aviation. So anything to do with aviation, that's where you would want to be. Whether it be learning how to fly to be a commercial or corporate pilot, or learning to be an engineer, working for NASA, doing all different things like that,
To
airframe power plant and maintenance.
to my understanding, it's supposed to be like the best in the country, right? As far as aeronautics.
Right. So that being said, everyone there also shared a similar goal. However, it wasn't something as common and as simple as money, but it was passion. They all shared passion. Everywhere I looked, you can tell all the freshmen who were coming in because they would always look up into the sky every time a plane took off. Our school was connected right to the Daytona International Airport, and so by the time you're a junior, even you see planes take off and stuff like that, you really wouldn't look up. In fact, those kids could actually tell you by the sound of the engine what type of plane it was and how high off the ground it was. And so you could still see that they had that passion. They just don't have to look at the airplane. And that's something that was a common denominator in at Embry Riddle. And so my question that I want to pose to Bob, and I'm kind of throwing him under the bus here, so I apologize in advance, Bob. You don't have to. I'm sorry, Nick. Sorry, guys. Bob is a nickname that he has. But you don't have to answer this because you might have no friends depending on your answer after this podcast. But do you believe that people in public school hold you back? That their mentalities maybe, or their attitude towards education, maybe I mean, granted, I would assume that people like yourself would gravitate towards like-minded people and associate with like-minded people. But generally speaking, in high school, you kind of, I mean, for the most part, if you're a sociable guy, you can get along with anybody and things like that. So do you ever feel that you're held back by the education that they offer and or your fellow classmates?
I feel that way when it comes to my fellow students because they don't have the same drive that I do. And I can't really say that it's 100% their fault as opposed to that mindset being a product of the environment. But being intellectually superior or whatever is frowned upon because you're not like everyone else, and you're basically expected to blend into the crowd and not stick out.
I agree. I think that from my own path, I remember when I first went to private Christian school, like in sixth grade, I was making very good grades. I was on the junior beta club, and I valued education a lot. And then I started to realize that I think being cool is more fun. um, and I felt like dumbing things down was a way to not go over people's heads and gain more acceptance. And so I would dumb things down because one, I'm going through, puberty. I want to bang girls, and like I was like, okay, they're not going after the smart dudes there, so Like it was almost like comedy and acting kind of dumb was something that started to become more and more of my identity as I started to accept the fact of popularity over education. Um, it wasn't really until I went to military school where I started to value education. Because when I got to military school, like school was the only time you got AC. Any other time, you were shining boots in the hot hot Georgia heat. So when I went to school in military school, I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to stay after because that was it. It was like the reward system of school was different than in the public setting of all these other things that can stimulate your mind that were away from school. Versus like school was like my refuge there in military school. And kind of the reasons why I was asking Andrew about college is that there was someone that I was working with, and they were asking me, well, do you think college is important and should I go to college? And this is what I always respond to people, and this is honestly how I feel about college. So I went to college. I thought after I would graduate or, you go through college and stuff, I would have this overwhelming sense of enlightenment of intelligence, or I was going to be so ready for my job and, ready to take on the world with all this information and stuff, or I was just going to be like a lot smarter or something. But that didn't really happen. But this is why I think college is still very important. I feel like college taught me how I think. And the way I mean by that is that I think in grade school, there's that boxed in method. There is, you comprehend this, you read it, you try to retain as much information you can, and we test you on what you know. And you know when the test is going to be, you're going to have homework at the end of the night, that's the way it is. But when you get to college, like, it doesn't matter. Like, Andrew told me this analogy about golf one time, and I feel like college is the same way. They never ask you how, they ask you how many. When it comes to the score. And that's what I think college is like. College, it doesn't matter the method of how you do whatever you do to get the grade. What matters is the results. And I think that that's what matters when it comes to the business world and the workplace and things like that. It's about the end of the day, the result of it. Now, I feel like there were some people I met in college who would drink all night, whatever, and they would get up at 4 a.m, they would cram, and they would ace a test. And that worked for them. Some people, they needed study groups, and they were really good with that. Some people need to be alone and listen to music, and they were good at that. But put those people in those different scenarios, and they fail in those areas because they're like, man, I can't listen to music. Like, I need to make sure I have other minds around me. Man, I need to get wasted and put my back against the wall. This is the only way that I learn. But I feel like college, you figure out how you learn the best. So no matter what you do after college, you'll know how to get the information for what you need because you're like, okay, this is how I think. This is how I learn. Now, that person that stays up all night and he's drinking and he aces that test, he's probably not going to change that behavior once he works at a company. He's probably still going to be a drinker, but at the same time, he has a PowerPoint presentation the next day. Now, that person, if they can really accept, this is how I learn, actually becomes more effective at their job. But I guess that that's kind of what I think that it does with college. And I kind of wanted to ask Andrew. That's why I kind of was asking Andrew about that. And so, what do you feel the importance of college is now? Now we have access of information, we have that education and things like that. Do you think people still need that college? They need to sit down in a classroom and have a lecture. Do you think that it's still relevant and current in 2014 into the future?
Well, I mean, honestly, I really think that it is. In terms of out in the job market and in the world, probably the piece of paper, the degree is. Because generally speaking, when you're looking at it from an employer standpoint and you're looking at that degree, they're looking to see if you can finish. A lot of people go to college, but there's a lot of people who don't finish. And, that's just the thing. Do you have the resilience? Do you have the tenacity to to set your mind on a goal and achieve that over a long period of time. And also with having a classroom setting, it holds people accountable. You're not required to be there. You paid for that class, yes, so you should be there. There's things you can only benefit from going to class. It's like basic economics in terms of when you're thinking about, what is my what is the next best option that I forego by going to class? What can you do with that time? What do you lose by going to class or by not going to class? And you got to take a look at that and make a decision that's best for you. But in my opinion, I don't see why, if you've taken the time to spend money on a class, why not go? And because anyone can, I've tried the online courses, and it's definitely not my learning style. I'll put it to you that way. One of the reasons why is because you'll sit there and it's really based on participation. But what if you have nothing to say? What if you have no questions? What if you understand the material? Then you've got to sit there and come up with some creative, thing to say. And of course, it's creative to you because you have no idea what you want to ask, because you already, if you fully grasp the material. But then in participating in a group like that, you'll also see some comments and some questions that you yourself might think, wow, that's really basic, and it should be, self-explanatory. Why would you ask that question? And then depending on your mentality and attitude, you might say to yourself, well, if these kids are asking these types of questions and they spend this amount of time studying, surely I don't need to spend, nearly as much time as these guys do. And then you may start putting off homework. You may start putting off studying just because you feel that, you're better essentially than the other students. And who knows, you may be. That's, I'm not, you may be, but it hurts you. It just has a lot of potential to hurt you.
Nick, what do you think about online courses?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to piggyback off of what you were saying with Nick. I was trying to hear what Nick's take was on online, but continue your thought.
Yeah. No. That was pretty much it. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I've taken 4 online courses. I'm currently enrolled in an American history course, a philosophy course, and a chemistry course. Chemistry is more in class than anything else, but back to what Andrew said. In my philosophy course, I'm not going to name any names, and in some of the other courses that I took, there wasn't really enough interaction between students. The last class that I took was rhetoric and composition, which is second level English, and I did my discussion posts every week, but what I would notice is I could never get anyone to comment on my stuff, and I'll admit my stuff was lengthy to read. And the way the classes are set up now is you get a grade for posting your own individual takes on whatever the prompt is, and you also get scored accordingly and get points awarded to respond to someone else's work, in which case you have to interact with the students and with your fellow classmates.
Right. Okay, so I think that I experienced the same thing you did with kind of like the online of having that interaction there. And I would have to say that I think there should definitely be a balance. Like, I don't think online courses are a bad thing. I still think there needs to be some type of foundation of a learning mechanism. But this is what I have to say to be devil's advocate when it comes to online courses. I think that with online courses, because there is not the safety net of the teacher there in the class, one is that you're forcing your mind to be more creative with your answers and seek out information yourself. And I think that is a good thing for people to learn. One thing that I find out kind of working in the corporate world, because I have more of a corporate job as my day job, is that I figure out when it comes to like hiring people and different employees, I always see these type of people. There's some people who see like a leak in a faucet. And some people will say, oh my God, that faucet's leaking. Is there a plumber around here? Someone needs to call somebody. Someone's got to do something. And then there's some people who see that leak in that faucet and immediately they take off their shirt and they're trying to tie it up. They're trying to find something gummy. They're trying to do that. They're reacting right there with their mind, with creative thinking skills right away to do that. I think online classes fosters that. It fosters the mind to be more creative in their thinking of, okay, I do have a book, but I have the internet also. I have videos that I can learn different things. I mean, I took Excel in class, but I learned most of my stuff for Excel in my workplace from Google and using YouTube. And now, from a person who's woo-woo with education, that may be, oh, well, that's you need to take a course and you need to sit down and you need to do that and do that there. But, there's also people I run into the workplace, they did the exact same thing that I did. It wasn't like they walked out of college with, now I know everything about Excel. I think this mentality of once you do school and you're done, we need to promote that you need to be in a constant state of learning. And that's not a bad thing. And I feel that I'm always trying to learn things, and I think everybody has different interests, but learning how to foster those interests into something magnificent is what school should be about. How do we get you to get more into what you're into and become an expert in that field? Because expertise is valued more over a technical aspect of anybody can be trained in something.
I completely agree, Dave. I mean, I like to consider myself a student of life. I constantly am searching and seeking knowledge and always looking to just improve upon myself, on a daily basis. And I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there with what you said. I haven't really you've just said everything that I wanted to say. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like, if you give someone an online course, and they're in elementary school, obviously that's not going to be effective. But I still think that getting to the point, because I think there's another aspect when it comes to grade school, also because of the way our jobs work. School is almost a training mechanism of staying in a spot for like 8 hours. Like, staying in a spot for 8 hours, also having the discipline of not having certain type of outbursts, being able to be focused on a task for hours of time. That is the work field in certain aspects of, if you're depending on what type of job you're looking at or what your idea of success is. And I think school reinforces that over and over on a daily basis of sitting in a spot for 8 hours. And if our society still uses this method of sitting somewhere in a retail store for 8 hours with 1 hour lunch break, and that's the way that's been set up there, I think that having the lectures and being in school is still important for that, of learning how to do that. Because I know if I didn't have school or anything like that, my attention span is like 5 minutes. Like, I needed school to learn how to be calm in 8 hours.
Now, Dave, one thing I did actually, now that I thought about it, I remember what I was going to say to you about your previous comment. And yes, I still do agree for the most part. However, playing devil's advocate here, Dave, I believe that you give too much credit to humanity. And that being said, the online courses, yes, in some instances may foster creativity in terms of different styles of research and different styles of learning in general. However, it also fosters cheating. It also fosters, unfair play. Anyone, if you're in an online course, especially one that never meets in person ever, can have someone else do that work for them. And at the end of the day, they get that, accreditation there with the amount of credit hours. And I generally, if you think about it in terms of, all that's wrong with the world and et cetera, for example, theft is a crime of opportunity. And with online courses, cheating is also, and not only in online classes, but generally speaking, cheating is also, an unfair play of opportunity. So with that, I believe you're just leaving the door wide open to a lot of unfair play.
See, I would think that I would have faith in the innovation of honing that down to try to eliminate that as much as possible. It's kind of like someone tried to present me an argument about we should have voting online. And the first reaction was like, that's ridiculous. Like someone's going to hack it, whatever. And then the person came with me with a rebuttal. It was like, well, don't you bank online? Don't you have your mortgage online? You trust that. You do that every day. But yet you don't feel that the system is going to be good enough for voting. And he goes, yeah, I definitely agree to it, but we got to a point where people were scared to give their credit cards online. Now that's kind of the norm. And because that system is something that we refine, we update, we look for glitches, and it's a constantly evolving system. I think that now, if we look at it, we're kind of we still are in this early stage of how we use the internet. I remember when teachers would defer anything that came out of Wikipedia, and now like that I see teachers referring to Wikipedia when they give out certain information. So I think that when you say that I have a little bit have too much trust in humanity, I agree with that. I think I do have too much trust in humanity. I do think that I'm very optimistic what I think that we can achieve. I think that when humans put their back against the wall when it comes to anything, I think that we rise to those occasions. When something needs to be done, I think that the human mind is far more capable than what we think of, especially in times of crisis. So I do recognize that it can be a flawed system. But do I agree that it's more flawed than it is of not having online and you have a book and before that someone's copying all your homework there at the end? And, some teachers can recognize that, some teachers can't. I know that they use something called Talal. I think it's called Talal now. With they check to see if there's plagiarism and stuff like that online when you turn into a paper. So I think it's a constantly evolving, improving system. And I think that if we keep the idea that the internet is unsafe and it's going to open the valves for cheating, I think that will be fixed with time.
Well, in terms of the actual logistics of cheating online, in terms of, well, let me rephrase, not cheating online, but you were talking about, the fear of, credit cards being, excuse me, online and et cetera, and how those things got fixed. Mm-hmm. Those were more of logistics in terms of actual non-human elements, in terms of added security, with different software being written, minus the human writing the software. Once it's written and it's programmed in and installed, it's on autopilot, pretty much. And it's self-sustained without human intervention for the most part. Well, what we're talking about in cheating online is that's a human trait. That's a tendency. That's something that can't be, prevented, if you will. If someone wants to cheat bad enough, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean they're going to be successful, but the attempt will be made. And that is not something that can be fixed with hardware and with software and things of that nature. That's something that's going to be, in my opinion, a retraining of someone's mind and how they think and morality and integrity.
Well, I'll just kind of give you my experiences. My last year of bachelor's class, it was either hybrid or online classes. In the hybrid classes, you did 75% online, and you did the rest of the percentage there in the classroom. And we would go to the classroom once a week. I found out that it was because when I first saw online, to be honest with you, I was thinking, oh man, it's going to be easy. I can open the book and stuff during tests and things like that. But I found out for me, and I'm speaking from my experience, it was harder to cheat online because they had it a couple years under their belt. For one, the quizzes were a lot shorter, like they were timed. And so, like, yeah, you could look at the book there, but I would find myself not being able to complete the quiz when I was looking up every single answer. Another thing is that they made it so that when the test began, the rest of your screen in the back was like blacked out, and you could not go back to that screen until that test was completed. So I couldn't like Google stuff. I was like, oh, and then I was trying to use my phone to do it, like while I was doing it on there. And then another thing, I was running into a time issue when it came to that there. And I went from a phase of not wanting to do online, completely against it, to the point where it was just like, crap, now I'm at a point where I have to do it. And then slowly over time, I got used to the system online to the point where I preferred it. I love the fact that I had the freedom to do what I want during the day, and it didn't matter as long as I submitted it before midnight. And there was times that I slacked because, like, man, I got the book open, I can do this. So I'll do it like at 11:30, and I couldn't complete it. I had procrastinated that much, just like how I did before online classes, and I dropped the ball, thinking that I had a cakewalk because I had resources available to me while I did the online classes. So, to me, that they definitely developed software to really hone down on it, using the human element of updates and everything every semester to improve on their system to eliminate cheating as much as possible. From copying and pasting things that are right there, we had to submit it through a system, and the system would told us what percentage was plagiarized. And we had to submit it with like less than 10% of things that were plagiarized off the internet before it could be accepted. I definitely feel that humans can alter software to make cheating not, I definitely don't think that it can be eliminated 100%, but I really feel that you can definitely alter software to make that harder to do.
Well, I'm not saying that it's impossible to. Well, let me rephrase. I'm not saying that you can't make software to deter cheating, or to discourage it. However, what I'm saying is that because you have the human element involved in terms of people, when given the opportunity, more people, especially in an anonymous situation where you're not exposed, may not choose the moral path, and the attempt will be made. I mean, especially you were talking about already, you were talking about trying to, you yourself, you're a great guy, Dave, and even you were subjected to this attempt at cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, how does that make me feel about it? Someone I don't know, someone out there that I.
But I didn't feel that I was more like, I guess my idea behind it was like it was going to be easier for me to cheat. But I found that it didn't, after I understood the system, it didn't seem like it was easier to cheat or less easier to cheat. It seemed like it was like on the same level. In my opinion, only from my experience. But Nick, in your experience there, do you feel that online classes, you've taken a couple of them, you're working with students there, do you feel that cheating has increased with online? Do you feel it's the same? What are your thoughts about cheating on online classes?
With the cheating in online classes, I would have to say that it stayed the same when compared to normal cheating, but the methods and how people went about cheating was the thing that changed. From what I found, the more difficult the class, the more a person was tempted. I really didn't see people cheating in, say, psychology classes or humanities classes or anything like art appreciation, but your cheating tended to increase in your higher level classes, mathematics, English being a repeat offender when it comes to cheating. And it all basically the way the system was set up. People felt compelled to cheat to meet the mark. And they would look at the other students they were making good marks, and they would think to themselves, well, if I'm having this much trouble, then how is the other person doing better than me? If they're having the same trouble than me and they're making higher marks, they have to be cheating. Mm-hmm. And basically it's just going with the flow, what everyone else is doing. What can I do to increase my chances of survival?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Andrew. I did have this feeling of when I did have my first online class, like I look left, I look right, no one's watching. Man, you know, I felt like they're just letting you do this, whatever. And then I started to realize like this is a lot harder than I thought. Also, all the tests and the classes that I had online, that every one of them were open book. The questions were just a lot harder. Like it wasn't so systematic of like, turn to page 12 and the exact question and there's the answer was. It was a lot tougher. Everything wasn't in the book. There was pre-recorded lectures that were also a part of the test. And it's hard to kind of like go through a 2-hour lecture and take a snippet out of the answer one question and you just wasted 10 minutes out of your 15-minute time slot for your quiz. And so, I got the lectures like you would in a classroom, but it was just like kind of like watching Netflix. It was on demand. So now instead of me coming in, stumbling in and feeling embarrassed and also being less reluctant to go to class because I wouldn't want the feel of the embarrassment of coming in late and my teacher giving me a dirty look, you know, it was okay. Now after I'm done partying with my friends, I can go to my Netflix version of my online class and click that lecture for that day. And I found that more intuitive to the way I already get information when I'm not in school. I know I watch a lot of documentaries. I'm obsessed with things about like Egypt and stuff like that. And I watch those things on Netflix on demand there. And that's technically not schoolwork, but that's something I'm interested in that I like to do. And I felt like my online classes fostered the way more that I already learned because everything I DVR, I fast forward, I go through, I watch entertainment and television on my time instead of it airing at 8 o'clock. And I feel like after the more I started to enjoy online classes, going to class seemed archaic to me. It seemed like, okay, let me run to the TV at 8 o'clock to watch American Idol. Like, I missed the first 15 minutes of it. And by the way, I'm not an American Idol fan. I was just using that for an example. But that's what I felt that online did for me. And I definitely felt like college converted me in how I felt about online classes. I think that if I didn't take them, I didn't go to school for it, I would have this stance of like, you know, you really need to have a teacher in the class, you know, man. People are getting lazy now. What's the world coming to? Like, that was my perception. That was my perception before I took the classes. And it was just like, man, these are tougher than I thought they were going to be. So it has to be the school system. The school system has to put that education first and also have hiring people that understand that people are starting to learn a different way. The ways they get media, the way they get that is just completely different. I think that now, before when you would have a science book, you would buy the book and you flip through it. Somebody had some scribble in there who had the year before. You know, there's like some phone numbers or whatever in the back. But now you can download a book on your iPad, and that one picture that has a page on there, it has that play button next to it. You hit that play button, and now you're finding out more about gazelles and things like that. You're seeing them move in the motion of the wild. So now your reward system has been hijacked to be entertained, and you're being tricked into it being educational. Because the interactivity of what you have, what you think is already cool. I'm already hitting play when I'm looking at an article. When I read now, when I'm reading New York Times, now that article comes to life because I'm seeing video attached to what I have. And now education is doing that. And so I'm very excited on the future of what holds of how people learn. Because, man, kids are so smart today. I mean, you are in high school speaking like a 30-year-old seasoned man. You know, and I'm very much in awe. I was just like, man, I was so dumb when I was in high school. I was like, I wish I was on the level that you are. And I meet more and more people like you. we're in a very, very interesting time in history. We're in a very kind of a weird one where I feel that our information is just going at an exponential rate of what we learn and things like that. There's another point I was thinking about, and I know now I'm kind of skipping here about online, was that I feel like when you go into a classroom, you're also dealing with, sometimes there's teachers that have these egos of when they're being challenged. I remember one time I asked an algebra teacher, I was like, so why do I need to know this? He said, well, you need to know this so you can get to the next class, and you get to the next class. That's why you need to know this. And I think that was a lot of ego of him not being able to answer my question. And so with him not being able to answer my question, I didn't really get a real answer. I got kind of like, all right, kid, like, I'm the leader in the room, and like, listen to me. And I've had bosses like that. They respond to anger if they can't answer a question. And I think the online kind of eliminates that factor. But there's still downfalls. I know I sound like an online class lobbyist right now, but there's definitely downfalls. I guess I'm more of a glass half full person when it comes to humanity.
That's an interesting phrase you brought up, Dave. Especially the way you phrased it. And I like that. You said you're more of a half glass full.
Mm-hmm.
It's a common phrase here in the United States, is it not?
It is.
And specifically, it's very common in saying it the way you said it.
Okay.
But just as that phrase, the glass is half full.
Uh-huh.
But because you didn't specify what it's full of or half full of, in fact, could you not say that the glass is overflowing? And the reason why I ask is because if the glass is half full, and now I'm going to get specific of water, but you're just saying that the content is full, well, what is the gaseous material around it? It's just, air, right?
You're saying around the glass or on top of the glass where it's not filled?
Yeah, on top of the glass where it's not full.
Mm-hmm.
If you heat water, it goes into a gaseous state.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So would it be false to say that there is water in the air? Well, let me phrase, not water, but a form of water.
Okay.
In the gaseous form. So essentially, they are one and the same. The water and the air, but just in two different states.
Okay.
Now, granted, of course, water is H2O if you're going to get technical here.
Yeah.
And of course, air has more elements than just hydrogen and oxygen. It's got some nitrogen in it and other stray things. I'm just thinking about it from a different perspective. And I like to say that, in going along with that, with not being so particular in the wording, that the glass is overflowing because it's one and the same material, or part of the same material anyways.
You sound like a chemist. And
I'm nowhere near any level where you can call me a chemist of any sorts.
Yeah,
But, I just always find it interesting how people never specify that phrase. They always say, "Oh, the glass is half full," or "the glass is half empty."
I think a lot of people don't put thought into cliche phrases.
Sorry?
I don't think a lot of people put a thought. Well, I would say people more of Americans and thoughts of cliche phrases instead of breaking them down of what they actually mean.
Yeah, I like to do that. I like to find out where they came from, how they were used. But yeah, I've always found that particular phrase interesting. And another one, since we're on the topic of cliches, is I love it when people come up to me and ask me, "What do you do for a living?" Because I love to answer them. I say, well, for a living, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a snowboarder, a pilot, a scuba diver. What do you do for a living?
An all-around cool guy. I read your Twitter.
I appreciate it, but they look at me perplexed.
Yeah.
And then I say, "Oh, you must be asking me, what do I do to support my living?" And they think about it, and they're like, "You know what? You're right." Because I would hope you do not associate yourself with your job in the sense that you believe you are your job or your job is your life.
Yeah.
I believe there's so much more to humanity and humankind than thinking that way. So I love it when people come up to me and ask me, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" It's great.
Well, Nick, you got a lot of ambition will you're helping people right now with not any form of payment. Well, I assume not. And so, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? As in being respectful to Andrew is for work, as far as to support your living.
I would like to become a professor at a university teaching math and psychology.
Math and psychology. Why
Math and
those?
psychology.
Why those?
Math has always been one of my strong points, and I love math, and I love math when it's connected to physical sciences like physics and chemistry. I've never really been a fan of life sciences. And when it comes to psychology, I've always been interested and fascinated by it. And the one thing I basically wanted to find out for myself is how people think, why they do the things they do. So it's math basically is for me the career, and psychology is the icing on the cake in that I get to make a living off of that, and I get to satisfy some of my own curiosity.
Well, the fact that you said psychology, that makes me smile there, because that's kind of how I started out, was going with psychology, because I was very interested in why people do the things they do. And then I met Cameron, and I'm not sure if you heard that podcast with behavioral scientists that we had on there, and he talks about his transition from psychology to behavioralism, like his conversion from Christianity to atheism. And he has a very interesting take on that, on why he went to behavioralism. And because you said math, and because I figure out with math, like a lot of people like to have these defined answers when they like to specialize in math. And I found that behavioralism fills that void for people who seek that so much. So I'm very curious. I'm very interested to have a podcast with you and Cameron one day, because I think that you would have some very interesting things to say to one another. But with that said, believe it or not, we have reached our hour there. And Nick, I have to tell you, man, you reached beyond my expectations to as far as being a guest here on the podcast there. And I would love to do it with you again. And if you would like to go ahead and let people know your Twitter, so if they have any questions to ask you directly about education, or just want to follow you because they just think you're a cool dude, and for listening to the podcast, become a fan. So if you want to go ahead and give that out and say any last words you have for everybody.
But yeah, to anyone listening out there, if you'd like to hear more from me, or just to see what I tweet on a daily basis when I get the time, follow me at uppercase N, Cofield, capital Cofield, the number 115. On Twitter, I'd be welcome to talk to you, and I'd love to have more followers. I'd like to thank you and Andrew for having me on here, and I would love to come back anytime.
All right there. Andrew, you have any shout outs or any closing words there?
Yeah, absolutely. First I want to thank our guest, Nicolas Cofield. Thank you once again for being on the show with us. It was definitely a fun time. I hope I didn't throw you under the bus too hard there with that one question. But as far as any shout outs, I do want to give a special shout out to Daniel Ori. Danielle, she is at That Last Kiss.
Oh yeah. I saw that she tweeted about the podcast being a fan. She was actually my first one to shout out also. So yeah, please, let's give her some good shout outs. She has to be a fan. Not only she's beautiful, but she's a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And she is she's a current student right now as well. She's gonna kill me for not remembering what she was studying, but but she actually attends the University of North Carolina here in Charlotte. So good luck to her with her schooling, and thank you for following us and being a fan.
All right. So kind of piggybacking off of that there. Some other shout outs we have here is Hot Nichols. Hot Nichols follows us, and like that name there, He is a Death Squad member. If you don't know what that is, you better look it up there, because Death Squad people, we support each other, and I'm one myself there. So thank you for following us, and I'd love to get it from a Death Squad member. We have Tommy Couch, and you can follow him at T Couch. And also Hot Nickels is Hot Nickel underscore Death Squad, or no, he's just at Hot Nickels. And then we have, okay, please apologize. I apologize in advance for if I butcher this name here. I'm going to try my best, but please be nice. I'm trying my hardest, and I definitely want to make sure that I acknowledge you as a fan. There is Elkanah, and it's Mumbinson. And I'm going to spell out her Twitter tag, because even though I butchered the name, at least that you can follow her correctly. So that's going to be at GIVOPYSUPOL. We also have Alex Stamp. I want to give him a shout out, and he's at Stumpinator, if you can follow him. And we have Atheist Punk 666. He's a follower of ours. We support everybody who's a fan of the podcast there. So thank you for following us. And again, I know I say this every episode, but I just have to express how much we enjoy doing this podcast, and we do it for the fans. Me and Andrew, we look at those Twitters. We're always dumbfounded when people tell us that they're a fan of it, a fan of the show, and we definitely want to just make sure that we let everybody know how much we appreciate them. Also, there's one thing that I have to also put a plug out there for us, only because that we want to keep delivering content to all our fans, and we are going to do this twice a week. And we want to do this as much as we can, as long as possible. With that said, storage and bandwidth costs a little bit of money. and for us to keep delivering content on there, we both have, pretty regular jobs, and trust me, we understand how it is for everybody. But if you're a fan of the podcast, we really appreciate your support. If there's any type of donation that you can give, and I'm going to be straight up honest with you, it costs us about $10 a month to keep up with the bandwidth and the storage that we have that may go up by how many followers we have. So it really doesn't require that much there. So if you could donate anything, whether it be $1, it's fine. If you got $1, it's good. If you don't, no hard feelings. We just want listeners onto the podcast there. So you can donate at, actually it wouldn't be an @ sign, I'm thinking about Twitter here, but it'll be on PayPal at neohalix@gmail.com, and I'm going to spell that out for you. And I'm sorry, I've been butchered that. It's neohalix1. So it's NeoHalixone@gmail.com. And if you can donate on there, we will send you a shout out onto the podcast there. And like I said, $1 or $2 that will help us out to give you guys more content. And we're going to keep doing this here. So that's all I have for today's podcast. We'll have another podcast for you next week. And we're not sure about the guests that we have coming on, but we'll definitely keep putting content out there for you. But that's it. And Andrew, you got anything else?
That's it. Thanks a lot, guys. It's always fun hanging out with you guys. And we hope to see you real soon.
All right. We're out.